Welcome to UFC Breakdown. Sweden will host a fight night for the 5th time when the Octagon lands in Stockholm on May 28th. In the main event, a potential light heavyweight title shot is on the line between two top contenders, Alexander Gustafsson and Glover Teixeira. We're going to be previewing that huge matchup and a whole lot more. Here's what's coming up on today's show. Sweden's biggest star is set to take centre stage in his hometown against a dangerous Brazilian brawler. We'll catch up with the man himself from his home in Stockholm and get his insights into this crucial matchup. In Fight Focus, we analyse the contrasting styles of these two contenders and see where the keys to victory lie. Hot on their tails, two more top 10 light heavyweights will meet in the co-main event when Switzerland's Volkan Oezdemir takes on Latvian-Canadian Misha Cirkunov. We preview this pivotal matchup and Dan goes on the mat to explore their skill sets. Also, we head to Liverpool to catch up with one of England's most promising prospects, Darren Till, as he prepares for his return to the Octagon. So joining me in studio is a man that needs little introduction, UFC analyst Dan Hardy, and of course, journalist and award-winning podcaster, Nick Peets. Gents, good to have your company today. We've got a lot to talk about. Something big is going down on May 28th in Stockholm. Great main events. We're going to talk about that lots. But the prelims are also some stuff to get excited about there, Dan.
They're stacked. There's a lot of good fights on. The one I'm most excited about is Darren Till. You know, we saw him in action twice. He's looked great both times, both really fun fights. And there's a lot of hype around him, but we've not seen him in action for a while. So seeing him on the card's good. And Trevor Smith against Chris Camozzi is going to be a good one as well. I'm expecting wrestling versus jiu-jitsu. Should be a good exchange.
Yeah, good to have that this side of the water. Yeah. I know both guys have been making improvements to their game as well, so very exciting. Well, the main event is brilliant, but also in the main card, we've got some other really interesting ones to look at as well.
Yeah, three really tasty welterweight matchups, similar to what Dan was saying. Strikers versus grapplers, real good contest, but of course, we're in Sweden. It's all about Alexander Gustafsson. We've got two fights at the top of this card, both involving fighters, all ranked in the top 10 in the light heavyweight division. Yeah. Massive night for that weight class, and expect fireworks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's direct our attention to that main event then. It is between the #1 and #2 ranked light heavyweights, of course, Alexander Gustafsson and Glover Teixeira.
Glover Teixeira!
So right now we are delighted to welcome our very special guest. He is beaming into the studio live from his home in Sweden. He is the face of mixed martial arts over in Stockholm. Welcome to UFC Breakdown, Alexander Gustafsson. How you doing, Alex?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. Before we talk about your upcoming fight, congratulations are in order. We understand that you have become a father for the first time.
Yes, I have. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And how's that working out? You're rubbing your eye as we speak. Are you a little tired already? How are you coping?
No, I'm good. I'm just having a good time here. We have beautiful weather and everything feels fine. I'm ready to go on next Sunday here, so I'm feeling fine.
That's good to hear. Has the birth of your daughter come at a good time? I know you guys, when you get deep into fight camp, things get tough, but has this been the added boost that you needed?
Yes, it has actually. I feel so much more relaxed and calm, and yeah, it's just been great. A great experience, and yeah, it's a motivation for sure. A motivation, and can't wait to get to the fight, have it over and done with, and then take some vacation.
I bet. Okay, well, let's talk about the fight then. So, you seem to have put together a real super camp full of monsters. Tell us who you brought in down at All Stars to help you out. Yeah,
that's true. It's been a great camp, and I had some great fighters from all over the world here at All Stars. Had a great camp, great sparring. I had Phil Davis over, Jimmy Manuwa is over. I got Ilir Latifi is here, and we got a couple of Polish guys, Mikhail Kita and a couple of Polish guys. We got some Russian guys coming in, Alexei, and the list just goes on. It's been a camp full of monsters, like you said, and I got my ass kicked here, so I'm ready. I feel like I've done my part now. Just right now, I'm just focusing a lot to take the weight and just heal up the body and feeling good and feeling great.
Nice. Hi, Alex. Dan Hardy here. Just a quick question for you about technical stuff. So obviously you usually have a reach advantage on your opponents. Is that something that you're looking to use in this fight? And how does the reach advantage play out on the floor as well? It was something you used against Blachowicz in your last fight. You were able to hit him and he couldn't do a great deal with you. Do you see yourself employing that in this fight?
Absolutely. I see my reach and my footwork is going to be one of the keys in this fight. Going to be on my toes. You're going to see a so much faster Alex this time. I've been working so much on just moving around, picking my shots, and it's a 5-round fight, so I'm not stressed, and I can guarantee you he doesn't want to go 5 rounds with me. So I'm ready.
Alex, you seemed to go through a stage at one point where you were considering your future in the sport, and is all that resolved now? Are you 100% focused on winning that light heavyweight title at last?
Absolutely, I always been, but you know what? I don't look past this fight at all. Glover is a great test, and I gotta beat him. It's nothing else. I just have to go in there and do my best and beat him. That's it. And then let's see what happens after that. After I beat him, let's see what's next on the line.
It leaves you in the same position as #1 contender, though. And obviously, with the division being so top-heavy at the moment, and with the drama around DC and John Jones, is there more of a focus to face John Jones again, or would you rather face DC for the title? Is that a thought in your mind at the moment?
No, it's not actually. I'm just focusing on Glover, nothing else. You know what? I would love to fight both of them. I want to fight. I want the belt, of course, but like I said before, John Jones is almost as good. Beat him as fighting for the belt. So, it's a choice I have to make after I beat Glover here. So, but that's my only focusing right now. Nothing else.
Alex, online, everyone's excited about this fight. We're excited about the event here in the studio as well. What's the buzz like in Stockholm right now?
It's good. It's good. It's been, people are getting ready. You can notice, like, people on the street, they're cheering for me, and people are ready now. So it's just a waiting process right now. So, and it's gonna be a great evening.
Great stuff. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations once again on becoming a father. We wish you the very best of health and skill ahead of Stockholm as well.
I appreciate that, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. OK, well, thank you there to Alex for joining us. Time now for a quick break, but when we come back, we continue our analysis of our main event and delve further into the stylistic matchup of these two light heavyweights in Fight Focus. Welcome back to UFC Breakdown. Today we are previewing the upcoming fight night in Stockholm, Sweden. In the main event, the top 2 light heavyweight contenders will be going head-to-head. Time now to head on over to Dan, who is at the screen for some analysis. First up, Dan, what are the numbers saying?
They're telling me all kinds of stuff, John. First of all, we've got to point out that Alexander Gustafsson is the younger fighter. He's also the taller man. He's got the height and reach advantage. But it's Glover Teixeira that comes in with the experience advantage, which could be useful in this fight, especially in the later rounds. If we look at the pie charts, striking leans towards Gustafsson, the submissions and takedowns towards Teixeira, which is what we would expect from a second-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But as we look at this next page, the first thing that jumps out to me is the takedown defense of Gustafsson. And you've got to think at 86%, that's after he's faced John Jones and Daniel Cormier, 2 of the best wrestlers in the sport. But takedown accuracy for Glover is very good, as well as significant striking accuracy and striking defense, which are both going to be very useful when he's dealing with the range striking of Gustafsson, which he's going to have to do in the early rounds. So when we look at Gustafsson's striking, he's a very loose fighter. He likes to stay on his toes. He likes to work in behind his long-range kicks and punches. When he gets his opponent backed up, the weapon that we're looking out for is the right uppercut. we didn't see it in full effect until he faced Silva. Look at the timing of this uppercut. Backs him up here with a flurry, but it's when he starts picking his shots. This is when we start to see his expertise in the striking range. He sees him level changing to throw the overhand right, and he times him perfectly with the uppercut. And you've got to think most of the people fighting Gustafsson are looking to level change because of his height advantage, even if it's just to find their way into strike. Against Cyril Diabate, it was the punches in the clinch that did the job, and then once he's established that clinch, you've got to think about the knees of the taller fighter. DC found out about that, but so did Jimmy Manuwa in London, and it was the knee that was the beginning of the end, followed by the uppercuts, which really got the win for Alex on that night. These are the weapons that he's going to be using against Teixeira, who's got much more of a crowding style. His favourite boxer is Mike Tyson, and you can see how that's influenced his fighting style. He likes to push his opponents back up against the fence and use short, tight-range punches. He uses overhand right, left hook over and over again. It's this favourite combination. And what you'll notice in a lot of these punches is he'll throw them one after another, overhand right, left hook. But the palms faced out. It's a very unusual punch. We saw JDS do it as well. But he hits with the knuckles. You can actually see the blood on the knuckles there where he's making impact with his opponent. He's not turning the hand over. Now, it's an unusual way of throwing a punch, but I think there is a benefit to it when you are working at very tight ranges. As you can see here against Maldonado, he's throwing a long-range left hook there, but then once he's closed the distance, he throws a couple of uppercuts, an overhand right, and then a really short left hook. And the distance that he covers with this left hook as well is quite amazing because he does most of the work with his feet. As you see here, he steps through with his right foot and powers through with the left hand. But on this replay, you can really see how tight his elbow stays to his ribs. Look at this. Really tight, short left hook. Very difficult to see, very difficult to predict, and obviously very difficult to defend. And what's nice about this style of fighting as well is it works him into a close range where he can start to implement his takedown game. Now, he's a second-degree jiu-jitsu black belt, so he's got to ground his opponents before he puts that into play. And he's got a real hustle to it. He makes things work. He figures it out on the spot, which is going to be useful against Gustafsson, who's got such high takedown defense. This is something we see him use quite a bit. He works in for a single leg and then switches to a knee tap and drives with his head. You can see him driving into the hip of his opponent to get them onto the canvas. We see it here against Bader again. He pulls him off the fence with the single leg and then drives across. There's the knee tap to block that guard, to not allow him to re-establish base on that side, and then drives him over it. Against Cannonier, we also saw a bit more creativity. Look at this aerial perspective that we have here. So he shoots him for the single leg again. He turns him, but then Cannonier's got the overhook, which doesn't allow him to free that arm and work for the knee tap. So he uses his elbow to drive him to the canvas and through his hip. That creativity is going to be very useful against Gustafsson because the first takedown's likely not going to work. It's going to be the second or third or fourth because of the underrated wrestling of Gustafsson. He's got a real hustle. He's very good at getting off the fence and creating space, and he doesn't even mind running away from his opponent to force them back into a kickboxing game. You can see here, really flees out of the way to create space. And one thing that a lot of people don't expect from a 6'5" kickboxer is when he does escape and he finds his way back into range, DC marches forward and immediately he level changes and takes him down. And it's the element of surprise most of the time which allows him to get this to work. But the technique can't be neglected. Look at this. He catches the inside leg and he drives. He's got a really good pivot. Watch this. He plants his foot. He's going to drive all the way around. And now watch. This is one step from there all the way across to the other side. That's over a quarter of the octagon that he's covering. Along with that turn, it strips the base away of his opponent, which doesn't allow them to find their feet on the canvas and start to think about defending with their upper body. Even against Jon Jones, it was almost a 360 to put him on the canvas, but that was the first time Jon Jones has been taken down. That was a real mental boost for Gustafsson. And to be able to go into fights, being the guy that took down Jon Jones and took down Daniel Cormier, everybody in this division has to take his wrestling seriously. Even in his earlier fights, it was a little bit more of a primitive attack, but it still worked. Excellent leverage under the leg and lifts Tahuna up and placed him on the floor. Same thing again with Jimmy Manuwa here. Even with the headlock, he's still able to lift his opponent and put him on the canvas. So we can't underestimate his strength as well. The one thing we have to think about, though, is if he does like to employ this game, we have to think about the submission threat of Glover Teixeira. This is not a joke. This guy is a very dangerous individual on the floor. He can put a squeeze on you from any position, and he's got a whole selection of submissions that he can attack from in any different position. Against Kyle Kingsbury, it was just a domination in top position, which allowed him to find his way into an arm triangle and jump off to the side, and Kyle could do nothing about it. And Kyle's a big, strong light heavyweight as well, possibly one of the biggest, but it was technique that won the day there. Beautiful arm-in headlock here, and you can also see he's trapped the arm of James Te Huna, which is another line of defence for him as well. He's no joke on the floor, and I wouldn't be surprised if Gustafsson feels quite comfortable on the feet and does start to take him down as well, because we saw in his last fight he has very intelligent grappling. If we look here, he gets the takedown against Blachowicz, but it's what he does once he's on the floor, covering the hips. Look at this, really nice, shadowing the hips, not allowing Blachowicz to turn his hips out and attack the arm. And the reason for this is because of his height. His height on the feet is applicable on the floor as well. You can see he keeps his shoulders right over his opponents. Now, a lot of the time when we talk about Frankie Edgar or Miocic, they stand up and they bear down over their opponents. Gustafsson doesn't need to do that. He can sit in their guard and lean overwards. And from this position, anytime they're going to kick their hips out to the side, it's almost like an early warning system. There's so much space between his elbow and their knee that he's able to read what's happening and adjust and constantly shut that submission game down. And another thing he likes to use is the can opener grip. This is something we don't see very often in mixed martial arts because it does make you vulnerable to the armbar. But once he's got that can opener position, he can chop away with really short, powerful elbows. And I would say if he gets Glover Teixeira on the back, there's no doubt Teixeira can get his guard back because he's an excellent grappler. But getting back to his feet is a different question altogether. And dealing with that reach on the floor is no joke.
Great stuff. Thank you, Dan. Well, it's difficult to really see who's the winner, who's the loser there. That's obviously the highlights package, which makes them both equally scary. But this is a big night, and especially individually, on the line, potentially, is a title shot. This could be, I think, the 10th win as well for Teixeira, but it's the homecoming for Alexander Gustafsson. He's just got to be so fired up to get back in there in front of his home fans.
Yeah, and you'd never bet against Gustafsson on home soil, of course, and the incentive in this fight is huge. You know, he came so close against both Jon Jones and against Daniel Cormier, your previous title shots.
Yeah.
We know what's on the line in this fight. If Gustafsson comes through this fight in Stockholm, he will be next. We know Jones is coming back. He's fighting DC for the belt again. Whoever wins that belt will defend against Gustafsson. That's kind of all set up now. So the incentive's there for Alex. He just needs to produce it on the night. And for me, as Dan points out, it feels a little bit like a generations fight for me. I feel like Glover Teixeira's from the last generation. It's the old, Randy Couture, Chuck Liddell, sprawler, brawler type action. I think Gustafsson, for me, is this generation. He's technically a lot sounder. His takedown defence is going to be imperative in this fight. But, there's a lot on the line for both these guys.
Yeah, OK. Well, you're saying about the technique, and I'm going to go back to something you asked, Alex. It was about his motivation. Why was it that you asked that question?
Purely because after the second DC fight, and of course that he fought Rumble in Stockholm, was caught cold very early in that fight, and a lot of noise has come out of the camp of saying, he's had his shot, he's fought for the belt twice, came agonisingly close twice. A lot of people thought he beat Jon Jones first time around.
Well, he did.
Exactly, and that rematch was talked about, but kind of ran away from him as well. And I think Gustafsson maybe fell out of love with mixed martial arts for a short while, but it was great to see him then. That was the best thing about seeing him live in the studio then on the footage. He's a happy man.
Yes.
And a happy fighter, Dan, is a dangerous fighter. And as soon as that VT finished, we were kind of like, we're so excited now because that's the old Alex Gustafsson that's back. The spark is back behind the eyes and expecting a huge performance now. Yeah,
I've been lucky enough to go out to the gym and absolutely he is fired up and the whole team seem very happy. It's like, we got him back and he looks like he's on target. I want to talk about the stats for a second there, Dan. So we were looking at Teixeira. He is more accurate with his strikes. He's got better striking defence as well. He seeks the takedown more often. He seems to be the more efficient fighter. But Gustafsson is the guy that brings the energy and he brings that volume. How, in your eyes, does that go against one another? The volume versus the accuracy?
Yeah, well, see, for me, the stats don't always tell the full picture. They don't always tell the full story, and I'll tell you for why. Gustafsson had a really close fight with Jon Jones. Yeah. He took a lot of shots in that fight, but then so did Glover Teixeira when he fought Jon Jones. But Glover didn't fight DC, and that was another fight. It was a 25-minute war where Gustafsson took a lot of shots. So I think that would have affected his stats because he's had 2 title shots as opposed to the one for Glover Teixeira. So the stats are very interesting to look at, and obviously takedown defence is a very important one at 86%. That's really, really high for this division, and that is going to be an important stat. But the rest of it, it's very much dependent on the opponent they're fighting. And this is a really intriguing matchup in which Alex, if he's smart, can really not get touched on the feet if he uses his reach.
Last question on this one then for you, Nick, and it's about Glover. I don't want to be unkind, but do you think this is his last shot at glory and therefore Are all of his chips in on this one?
Yes, I do, because the light heavyweight division, certainly below these guys, these are, you know, we're talking about the top 5 guys in the world, really, but below this, there's a lot of shifting and changing coming on. I'm sure we're going to come on to it later in the show. I just think there's a lot of young, hungry guys beneath them looking to make a name for themselves, looking to break through. And for me, for Glover, as I say, for me, this is a shootout to fight for the light heavyweight title, and if Glover doesn't win this one, then he's going to end up at the back of a very long queue of very strong and young, tough guys.
Yeah, good point. Well, we can talk about this one for many, many more minutes, but there is more to talk about, and it goes back to your point, Nick, actually. So in the co-main event, there are another 2 young upcomers who are very hungry indeed. They are Misha Cirkunov and Volkan Ozdemir. Misha Cirkunov looks to break into the top 5 with his 9th straight win against the higher-ranked Swiss contender Volkan Ozdemir. After the break, we take a closer look at the stylistic matchup, and Dan goes on the mat to break down their key techniques. Welcome back to UFC Breakdown. Today is all about the upcoming fight night in Stockholm. So the hometown hero, Alexander Gustafsson, will be taking on the Brazilian veteran, Glover Teixeira. But before we get to that fight, there will be a brilliant co-main event between 2 surging contenders at 205 pounds, Volkan Ozdemir and Misha Cirkunov.
Ozdemir's got a little bit of a mean streak.
Another quality bout at 205. So let's kick off the analysis, Dan, with the tail of the tape.
Well, this is the perfect co-main event for this card, especially to keep a focus on the light heavyweight division. We've got number 7 against number 5. If we look at their stats, as you can see, Misha's slightly older. He's the slightly bigger man as well, 2 inches in reach and height. Their records are almost identical, so we can write that off. But when it comes to the career stats, this is where it gets exciting. So between them, they have 19 first-round finishes, 10 for Volkan, 9 for Misha Cirkunov. But this is the stat I want to focus on most of all. 69% of his wins come by knockout. He's a kickboxer, and he's a heavyweight kickboxer as well. He's coming down, so he's bringing a lot of power with him. Misha Cirkunov, on the other hand, comes from a judo background, and 54% of his wins are by submission. 3 out of the 4 wins in the UFC are by submission as well, so we can expect a much more of a striker versus grappler matchup. If we look at the top 10 rankings, you can see their placement. Obviously, we have the main event there, but these guys are just a few steps below in a really, really tight division. Now, Cirkunov's had 4 wins in the UFC so far. He stopped all 4 opponents. Volkan came in on a short notice fight, a split decision over OSP, and jumped immediately above him in the rankings to number 5. So I think Misha's going to want to settle the score here and try and climb his way up the rankings with this win.
Be careful what you wish for, I guess, Nick. Yeah, as Dan was alluding to there, Misha is lower ranked than Volkan, who burst onto the scene after that win over OSP.
I think that's what makes this slightly unusual, because a lot of fight fans won't be familiar with Volkan, may not have ever even seen him fight before. You know, this is only his 2nd fight in the UFC, but you've got to understand that this is fight sports. We're not talking about tennis or golf, where it's a ranking system over the course of a season where you play tons of matches. In fight sports, you might fight 2, maybe 3 times a year, and to be the man, you've got to beat the man. So if he comes in at late notice and beats OSP, and OSP is ranked number 5, then there's a strong argument, as you can see there, that he goes straight in at number 5. And this is a guy with vast experience, Dan. You know, he's been a training partner with some of the biggest hitters in the world for a long time. He's been probably a bit slow coming into the UFC, but now he's here. He's claimed a massive win, and he deserves his ranking.
Yeah.
Well, he's certainly got a target on his back for that one. So as much as Dan wears a lovely waistcoat and tie, we can't help but see him try and put on the gloves. So earlier this week, we sent him out to his happy place, where he's looked to show us some of the key potential techniques that these 2 light heavyweight contenders might employ on fight night.
Misha Cirkunov joined the UFC in 2015 and has since put together 4 really impressive stoppage wins. Volkan Ozdemir, his opponent in Stockholm, has joined the UFC fairly recently in a short notice fight against OSP. He edged out a split decision and has since jumped Misha Cirkunov in the rankings. That's got to sting a little bit, and in Stockholm, they get to settle the score.
Volkan Ozdemir made his UFC debut against Ovin Sempru, who's also a southpaw, much like Misha Cirkunov, so a lot of the techniques he used in his debut will cross over into this fight. Now, fans of UFC Breakdown will remember me talking about this before, when you force your opponent back up against the fence and then open a doorway to force them to step in the direction that you want. This is going to be a key for Ozdemir because most of his techniques that are the most powerful are his right leg kicks. So, he used these in two ways. Obviously, the body kick's there, but the inside low kick and the head kick are the two that I see him using the most. So as he's backed his opponent up against the fence here, I've got Ed Arthur playing Misha Cirkunov, and as you can see, he's standing southpaw, so that opens this target up for me for my low kick. As I'm standing here, he has two options. The first one is to check the inside low kick, using his shin to block the kick, or the other one is to ride the kick, pulling his leg away. They both have the same result. He shifts his weight onto his back leg. So when I force him to choose a direction, I'm going to force forward here and make him choose a direction. Now, obviously, he's timid because he thinks the inside low kick's coming. So as I throw this kick, I'm going to come with a massive sweeping head kick and catch him as he steps right on the arms. And it doesn't even matter if he blocks them because only a few kicks will land before the doc needs to fix it for him. Moving on to Misha Cirkunov. He's had 4 fights in the UFC, stopped all 4 opponents, 3 of them by submission due to neck attacks, which is what I'm going to discuss today. But first, I want to talk about his style. He likes to bully people up against the fence with a very aggressive style, and as he pushes them back, he starts to slip out to the right and throw a big, powerful left hand down the center. Obviously, if he lands this on his opponent's chin, he's going to crack them there, they'll drop against the fence, and then he can jump on the neck from there. But the other thing he has to bear in mind is, as a southpaw fighter, his lead leg's very vulnerable to an orthodox fighter. So as he throws this hand, his opponent will time it and level change, which also allows him to wrap the neck and start threatening with submissions from there. Cirkunov now finds himself in a position where he's defending a single leg takedown. There are 2 things he's going to do here to ensure that he's safe in this position. The first thing is, using his right arm, he's going to pry down the inside of his opponent's head, and you can see my hand here. I'm going to reach through and I'm going to grab his lat here. So this will give me some purchase, some control in his upper body. The next thing I'm going to do, the leg that he's controlling, I'm going to sprawl it away and extend his grip to break it. Just there like that. From here, I'm going to catch the back of the tricep and I'm going to pull it across to this side of my body so I can slide my knee in. Now I have some control over this side of his arm as well. It's going to stop him escaping. My next thing is the hand on the back of the wrist. This allows me to really start to tighten this up and take control of his neck and arm. Now, the next 2 stages are very quick. They need to be done simultaneously to stop the opponent bailing out and escaping this position. I'm going to slide this knee right across to the far side, getting it across his belt line as I lift him up, fire the knee across. The next stage, which has got to be done very quickly, this leg has got to come over the top and lock down on his back. This will stop him rolling out. Now I can start to adjust the arms and get the tap. And there's only one way out of that. That's to accept defeat.
So Nick Cirkunov goes from one prospect in Nikita Krylov to Ozdemir, another prospect as well. And he's caught the attention of the champion DC. He's such an exciting prospect.
Yeah, I think the fans are really building behind this guy now as well. You know, we've seen him 4 times in the UFC, and we've seen 4 finishes. He's actually on an 8-fight finish throughout his career in his last 8 fights, So he comes into this, as Dan points out, as a real dangerous submission fighter, excellent on the ground. but also with heavy hands too. We've seen him score a knockout already in his UFC run. So this guy's got a little bit of everything. And it's the point we talked about Glover Teixeira with the guys biting on the heels. This feels like the next generation is coming through now, and this guy is really the one to watch for me in this light heavyweight class to make a run at the title.
OK. Dan, I want to reference some stuff he did on the mat. So Cirkunov has quite a few submissions that we could look at. Why did you choose that one to show us?
Well, more than anything, it was because it's quite unorthodox and because he got it on Krylov, who was a top contender. But he has a habit of attacking the head and arm in various different positions. Even in his stoppage win in his first fight with the UFC, there was still a chase for the submission for the neck first before he settled for I'll take him out and I'll beat him up from here. You know, there's always a mindset to knock him down with the left and then start attacking their neck straight away. And we saw Ozdemir attacking double legs on OSP in his first fight. So we can expect that. And obviously with the southpaw orthodox thing, it makes that lead leg very vulnerable to the single leg. So I'm expecting him to look for that opportunity early on. OK, well, staying with Ozdemir then, again, in referencing what you went to on the mats there, we've only seen him in the one fight. I think he's got 70% of his wins in the first round. Yep. But in the UFC, we saw him against OSP. We saw quite a lot of different stuff from him. And you were showing how he needs to dictate the range and control the space of the octagon. Why is that going to be so relevant against Cirkunov? Well, he's shown his right leg kick is so powerful, whether he's going to the inside of the leg, to the body or to the head. But what I like about it is that it's not a traditional tie kick where he sweeps from the hip. He sweeps the whole leg. So it's basically, he just it's like a drift net. He just catches whatever's in its wake. And usually it's an arm, it's a forearm. And you know, they'll take a lot of shots and it will damage that arm. But in order to make that work, he's got to force them towards it. And if we watch early on in the OSP fight, there were a couple of times when OSP slipped out to the wrong side and he's trying to catch him with his left hook and it just wasn't working. You can see he's got so fewer options on that side, whereas if he can force his way across his left to make his opponent circle towards the right kick, he can throw that all day.
This isn't a guy we've not seen much of as fight fans, but you know, we need to remember he made a name for himself as a sparring partner for Alistair Overeem, and now he's a sparring partner, or has been for the last couple of years, with Rumble Johnson. Yeah. So even though we haven't seen much of him in the UFC, he's tough, he's teak tough. Yeah, down at Combat Club under the guidance of Henry Hoof, Gilbert Burns and a number of other coaches. And I've seen he's got a YouTube channel. I don't know if you guys have checked it out. There's been a real heavy focus on footwork and explosiveness. I think they've worked out in similar places to some NFL stars. So to your point, Dan, I think he's been working on those movement patterns which are going to really play into his game. Well, it's going to come into play in this fight because there's no doubt Cirkunov's going to try and make the octagon feel as small as possible. So he's going to have to be on his toes, whether he's controlling the space and forcing Cirkunov up against the fence, or whether he's the one trying to back up and stay away from Cirkunov in his ground game. All just turning up with that massive frame that he's got. It looks pretty imposing and intimidating as he steps into the octagon. True. We're going to be taking a look at a number of other fights on the card. Got to take a quick break now, and we will also be looking at one of the UK's hottest prospects. After nearly 2 years on the sideline, Darren Till is set to make a return to the octagon in Stockholm. We head inside his training camp at Team Kaobon as he prepares for his upcoming fight against Yasin Ayari. Welcome back to UFC Breakdown. So today, the centre stage is UFC Fight Night Stockholm. We've already covered the two massive bouts at 205, but there are some other very interesting, exciting matchups on that main card. And for that, Dan, let's talk jiu-jitsu. OK. Ben Saunders versus Peter Sobotta. This is a really intriguing matchup. Obviously, Ben Saunders, you know, he's got that American top team behind him, so that's a huge team with a lot of resources to hand. But he's also spent a lot of time with Eddie Bravo as well, you know, a very creative, developmental style of jiu-jitsu. So he's got that Ricardo Laborio black belt behind him, giving him the basics, the foundation of jiu-jitsu, and then Eddie Bravo and all of his guys that are constantly throwing new things into the mix. So even if you have good, strong basics, there's always something you can be caught with unawares because you've just never seen it before, and that's what Ben Saunders brings to the table here. Yeah, and of course he's fighting Peter Sobotta, the German Polish guy who comes out with the Jamaican flag. He runs his own gym, Planet Eater, but the link there with Dean Lister. So we know his
his black belt is solid.
Exactly, yeah. You know, Dean Lister, one of the best grappling coaches in all of mixed martial arts, bar none. You know, so his black belt stands up as well. But you know, what I like about Sabota is he's completely unpredictable, and similar to Ben Saunders actually as well. These guys have been to the well before. This is Sabota's second stint. It's Saunders' third stint in the UFC.
Yeah.
They're both hungry guys. They're both out there. They're later in their careers, but they're in a welterweight division that's got plenty of opportunity right now. And this is going to be a hell of a show.
Another fight. And it's a man that we came off the back of Belfast talking about, Al Hassan, who's
Yes.
fighting Akhmedov. But let's talk about the Ghanaian-born fighter first.
Well, he's absolutely terrifying. I mean, that's really what we have to say about him. He's got 7 stoppages, 7 first-round finishes. He's got a strong judo background, but we've not even seen a glimpse of it so far. As soon as he lands fists on people, they fall asleep. You know, and in his debut against Charlie Ward, it was exactly that. I mean, you know, Charlie Ward had the crowd behind him. Hassan came in, he just connected and knocked him out clean, and that's what he's going to be watching out for in this fight, because I mean, anything that he lands is devastating.
But he's fighting someone from that region of the world, Chechnya, Dagestan. It's always a tough fight.
It is, of course, but I think the problem with Akhmedov at the minute, I don't think he quite knows where he is in his career either. Don't get me wrong, he's come off the best win of his career over Kyle Noak, retired Kyle Noak down in Australia. But he was at Greg Jackson's gym, now he's at ATT. He started as a middleweight, now he's a welterweight. Alarmingly as well, he's got a knockout on his record against a complete non-puncher. And what we do know is Al Hassan is anything but a non-puncher, so I would not blink when this one goes down.
Yeah, another fixture. There was a slight change. Emil Meek is out. In step Enkamp. He is this bright young thing from Sweden, the Karate Kid. I think that karate's in his blood.
Yeah.
And he fights at Nordin Taleb. But what do you know about this new guy?
Unbeaten record, local boy from Stockholm, coming at late notice to fight in Stockholm on a card headlined by Alexander Gustafsson. You know, is there any better storyline here to steal the show? You know, we always get narratives like this with UFC events. We always get this one guy that we perhaps haven't heard of or we weren't looking forward to that comes in with no pressure and completely steals it. And for me, that's what Enkamp can do here.
But he's up against a bit of a veteran in Nordin Taleb, who has mixed up his camps, used to be with TriStar, over at Tiger Muay Thai now. I think he just wanted to refine his striking, perhaps.
Yeah, you know, he's a big, strong individual, and he has the ability to pick up whatever he's being taught. When he was at TriStar, you could see the things they were implementing into his game. Obviously now, moving over to Tiger Muay Thai, you've got to expect a much more of a striking-based attack. He's just not really managed to find a foothold in the division at the moment. You know, he's not been able to put the wins together to get him into a relevant position where he can now start calling the shots. And he finds himself in this position. He's fighting in Sweden against an upcoming Swedish prospect. It's a short-notice fight, a switch of opponent. And you've got to think, you know, if you're a Swedish prospect, you've got to be looking at your weight class and thinking, I'm going to stay ready in case any of these guys fall out. And I would imagine Enkamp's going to come in and shape.
OK. Well, there's someone else who's fighting on the card. Well, I know you have a special
Speaking of
interest
local
in.
boys.
He is a local boy. He's a fellow Liverpudlian, and he goes by the name of Darren Till. He's got a really interesting story, but you're going to tell it best.
Yeah, a phenomenal young fighter. And you know, when he had a couple of amateur fights back in Liverpool, and then unfortunately fell in with the wrong crowd, had some difficulties. And as coach Colin Heron from the Cowbon gym, an old gym of mine actually, I used to train there myself. Colin put him on a plane, threw him over to Brazil, said go and spend some time in Brazil, focus on not only getting away from the trouble, but also focus on your ground game, because Cowbon's very much a striking gym. So he went over there. 4 years later, he's still over there. You know, he's completely acclimatised. He builds up this phenomenal 11-0 record. And let's face it, you know, some of these Brazilian cards that he was being put on, he was being given no favours whatsoever, yet he racks up 11 straight wins, most of them by knockout. Phenomenal striker, huge for a welterweight. And then obviously he made his UFC debut in his 12th fight. He fought against the Brazilian in Brazil, smashed him to bits with phenomenal elbow game. and suddenly a star was born. He gets on the microphone, he's speaking Scouse Portuguese, he's speaking Scouse English.
We've never heard Scouse Portuguese in the English language
But
before.
the entire UK MMA fan base, we just completely took to him straight away. And we thought, wow, we've got an absolute star here. He rumbled straight into a fight with Nicholas Dalby, which he completely dominated the first 2 rounds, in my opinion. Popped his shoulder out, lost the 3rd round by 10-8 on a judge's scorecards. That was ruled a draw. And unfortunately, it was that shoulder injury that's kept him out for almost 2 years, John.
Yeah, and shoulder injuries are very, very difficult. The knee joint is a lot easier to repair, but they're so unpredictable, Dan.
Well, it's got so much mobility in the shoulder joint. You know, the knee joint moves in one particular plane, whereas the shoulder joint does all kinds of things, and you need it throughout every different transition in mixed martial arts. He actually injured his shoulder really early in the third round, and if you watch, there are points where you can see Dalby working for takedowns, and he's trying not to use that arm to post on, but has no choice. He even throws it a few times and hits Dalby with it. It was a great bout, and what I saw in the first couple of rounds was a really nice kind of that arrogant, cocky Muay Thai style. You know, there was a point where Dalby teeped him to the stomach and he caught it and he just kind of looked at him like, come on, what was that? You know, I love that kind of brash arrogance that he carries into the octagon, and it's based purely on the fact that he is capable and he knows he's capable. So that confidence is, you know, it's worthy. He's worthy of it.
OK, well, if you have forgotten about Darren Till, we're about to remind you what he's all about. We caught up with him last week to see how he's getting on in training.
It's good just to be back in this environment. This is what I love. Since Christmas, I've been to hell and back. It's been really hard, but I feel good for it. Like, I'm just in such a good place. I feel fit, I feel strong. I feel like everything's going to be easy.
Okay, people, slide, leap, sharp, shadow boxing, pull. Go!
Tuesday we usually come in and we always start, you know, a bit of shadow, maybe skip, a few press-up circuits to get warm, and then we get straight into sparring, because Cole knows that's what drives me. Like, I like to spar, I like to hit people and get hit.
Good, good. Straight back on it. I sent Darren off to Brazil. There's a lot of influences at the time in his life that were no good. Things were only heading one way, and he's a hell of a talented athlete. I didn't want to see that wasted. Hit him with the first shot, let him walk off, go finish. The time he spent away was really good for him, physically and mentally, so he developed his ground game, his grappling game. He's already a very high-level striker. I look forward to seeing how far we can push that. Control the distance. Yeah, he doesn't touch you. Darren's fighting Jessen. Jessen kind of accepts to be dominated and pushed around, which Darren's really good at. So we've been working on the control of the space, the distance, not getting overzealous, trying to force him to throw something he doesn't want to throw, put him under a bit of pressure. That's perfect, keep landing that. Every little mistake, capitalise on for him. And then reacting off that, which Darren's also very good, and he's very accurate, so we're looking to capitalise on that accuracy.
The training here at Carbon is the hardest training I've ever experienced. We have maybe 5 or 8 rounds of hard sparring. And then straight after that, you know, we'll be straight into drills. He's trying to take you down, you're subbing him, and then you're on him. And it's not like 1 for 1, it's 1 minute me, go. It's 1 minute him, go. So you're never getting a rest.
Yeah, fast. Perfect.
The thing with Colin is, you've got to be giving 100%. If he feels like you're giving 80, he'll drag it out more.
Man, change. Bail option, people. Bail.
Every round, I'm going for it. I'm taking down, I'm beating them up on the ground, I'm beating them up standing. So, like, right now, I'm just ready to go. Everything my coach Colin's been teaching me is just coming together, feel loose, I feel confident, and everything I do in sparring, I can see myself doing in the fight. So, you know, I just feel so good at the moment.
I think the time Darren's had off, in that time he's matured. He's gone from like a boy to a man. We're going to see an improved, a better Darren Till, but we're only scratching the surface.
This right now, this is the hardest I've ever trained in my life. I've never trained harder. I'm still unbeaten, I'm still young and I'm still active, but this time I don't think it's going to go past 3 minutes. In the first 3 minutes, he's going to get caught. Because I've had such a long time off. People have definitely forgotten about me, for sure. The main motivation's been like proving everyone wrong. I just visualise what I'm going to do in these next few years, and it gets me excited. I can't wait to come back.
Darren is sounding and looking great. Can't wait to see him back.
He looks phenomenal. I was down the gym recently. He looks bigger and stronger and more confident and cocky than ever, and that's all part of his game.
Can he be any more confident?
Well, you'd be surprised. And it's just nice to have him back training in the UK again now, because he was in Brazil so much, but I believe he's coming back now to do camps on home soil, which is kind of unusual. It's usually the opposite way around for fighters. But I say he comes into this fight now with his tail up, but he realises he's got to reintroduce himself to the UFC fan base, and so I'm expecting a massive performance from Darren Till.
Yeah, and I said confidence. I mean, he doesn't have arrogance. I think he's got a really good balance. But Yeah,
swagger.
He does, and we need that. We
Yeah.
need that. Makes him very interesting to watch. Well, I'm intrigued anyway. But he is fighting Yasin Ayari, who fought against your boy. What did you think of that performance?
I thought it was a good performance. I thought he fought very maturely. I mean, Jimmy Warled's a very tough opponent, and he's got so much experience, so he knows how to win fights. And Ayari, you know, he controlled the octagon very well. He was on his toes, he was moving around, lots and lots of lateral movement. And then, as we saw in the second round, he started to establish that uppercut, which is really what he started to catch Jimmy with. And I thought that was what really won him the fight. I think, he's a big welterweight. I think he's very light on his feet. He moves very quick. He really moves like a cat for a welterweight. It's quite surprising how smooth and slick he is. And he's quite unorthodox. He doesn't throw things in a traditional boxing style. They come from strange angles. And that's a problem for anybody because, you know, with the 4-round sleeping pills, you only need to get caught one time. And he definitely has that power to hurt people.
Yeah, he's got a real close association with Peter Sobotta as well. And I know they've got, like, the German Muay Thai champion in that weight class in the gym. So they're going to be well prepared for that. So it's going to be good.
Till's leg kicks, they're going to be the key to this fight.
Yeah. Oh, really?
His leg kicks, his power kick into the legs, that's going to be the key to open up this fight and get the finish.
You heard it here first. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your insight and analysis. Dan, you and I are going to be there in Sweden behind the mic. I personally cannot wait. Yeah. So that wraps up this episode of UFC Breakdown. To find out where you can watch the event in your territory, head on over to UFC.com. Make sure you continue the conversation using the hashtag UFC Stockholm and the handle @UFC Europe. And from all of us here at UFC Breakdown, thanks for joining us.
I'm proud to fight here in my hometown.
A showcase of two of the best fighters at 205 in the world today. Gustafsson looking for the finish.
That's why they call him the Mauler.
Teixeira all over him.
That guy is an animal.
Stockholm's my home. I will knock him out for all my fans.
I know the power that I have in my hands, and I'm gonna knock him out.
Good Lord, what a good fight this is.